So I can see that we've had a few more people call in the last few minutes. You just want to jump in and say your name and what organization that you're working with.
Hi, Sherry Carney, Franklin County.
Rachel Wallace, eConsult Solutions.
Hey, it's Tori from the National Low-Income Housing Coalition.
Hey, Tori.
Hey, guys.
Levana.
Ross Clark from the Corporation for Supportive Housing.
Maria Williams from the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence.
Lauren Campbell from the Department of Community Development for Chester County.
Derek Kendall Morris, Habitat for Humanity, Greater Pittsburgh.
Leah Doherty, Diana Myers Associates.
Linda Drummond.
Colleen Downey.
Hey, Colleen.
Hey.
All right, so I'll just walk through our agenda of what we're going to talk about.
I'm Sophie Rowe from Operations Safety Net, Pittsburgh.
Great. Hi, Sophie. Welcome.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So I'm just going to walk through the agenda of what we're going to talk about today, and then I'm going to mute everyone so that we can kind of minimize the background noise. And if you want to unmute yourself, and Colleen, correct me if I'm wrong on this, you press star 6 to unmute yourself?
Yes. Or no, star 7, sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Yourself.
So when we get to the question and answer, you press star 7 to unmute yourself. And Tori, you probably remember that, but you'll have to press star 7 to unmute yourself.
How do you actually mute the phone?
You press star 6 to mute yourself, but I'm just going to go ahead and mute everyone starting now, just to reduce background noise.
Okay.
The conference has been muted.
Great. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to do a quick state update and then a more comprehensive federal update, because many of you are going to be attending the National Alliance to End Homelessness Advocacy Day in a couple of weeks. And so we're going to be talking about what's going on at the federal level. And then we're going to spend some time just talking a little bit about the meetings themselves, for those of you who are going, how to have a strong meeting, and then we'll take questions from there. So again, my name is Levana Layendecker, and I am the Deputy Director for the Housing Alliance. And I just wanted to update everyone on what's going on at the state level. So as many of you, I'm sure, have seen by now, the state actually passed the budget on time this year, the last week of June. It was the first time that we had an on-time budget in over a decade. And that's, good news for the state in terms of what we'll be able to accomplish, because we won't all be bogged down in budget discussions for months to come. It did shorten the amount of time that we usually would have to kind of negotiate around legislation at this time of year. Usually we're in previous legislative sessions, we've gone into July and August. So there's been lots of time. And so I think everyone was caught almost a little bit off guard on some of the legislation that just, takes a couple of weeks to work out. So as a result of that, the state housing tax credit, which is our priority legislation that many of you held meetings on and talked about on Home Matters Day, is still being worked out in terms of the details that need to go into the legislation to make sure that the tax credit works properly. So we're looking now at introduction of that legislation in September. The work in the background continues to go on, but they won't be able to introduce until they have a session day again, and the next session day will be in September. So we're working on that. We still have our 10 co-sponsors and a lot of support for that bill, and we expect it to continue to move forward in a pretty smooth manner and to continue to be supported. As for other legislation, there was some exciting news and a lot of activity around blight and housing legislation right at the last few weeks of June. So there was a lot of good news. One great piece of news is that House Bill 352, or the Clear Title Law, was passed. This is something that the Housing Alliance has been working on for more than a decade. And what this bill does is it shortens the period of time that a person can gain clear title to a property that they've been living in if their landlord passes away without leaving a clear heir. So if they have no children or did not, make it clear that, or like if a family member who was a homeowner passes away, but they did not leave a will that left their home to their spouse or their partner or their child. It used to take 21 years. There was a 21-year waiting period before the family member or obvious inheritor would be able to start the process to gain title to that property, and now that process has been shortened. That waiting period has been shortened to 10 years. This does affect a lot of families all around the state, and so we're really excited to see that passed. Another piece of legislation that moves forward and will likely pass in the fall is Senate Bill 919, which codifies at the state level the relocation assistance for domestic and sexual violence victims in public housing. So there is a policy on the federal level that ensures that people who are victims of domestic violence can be rehoused in a safe way. That was not codified at the state level, and state leaders thought that it was really important to make sure that it's also codified at the state level if for any reason the federal law were to change. And so that bill actually passed the Senate and is waiting for a vote on the House floor, but will likely pass non-controversially in the fall. And one bill that we stopped was legislation that would reduce the protections on payday lending. There was a real threat that payday lenders were going to get their way and be able to really loosen the rules that protect people from extremely high interest short-term loans. And with the advocacy of the Coalition Against Payday Lending, we were able to stop that legislation from moving forward in committee. Some other bills that we've just been watching that passed in the last month that are relevant for housing included what they call the Fast Track Foreclosure Bill, which basically shortens the time period from which after a house is foreclosed, which it needs to be maintained and turned over to a new owner or a municipal entity, and changes the rules around how that property is maintained by the municipality. And the Land Bank Powers Expansion Act, which gives redevelopment authorities the ability to become land banks with authorization from a municipal entity through a vote in a city council or county board of whatever that the county have different commissioners or directors or things like that. And this will allow more land banks to be created around the state. So that's what's going on at the state level. We will keep you posted as to any progress on the state housing tax credit and expanding the state housing trust fund, which are the main priorities that we are working on right now. But with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Victoria Bourret from the National Low Income Housing Coalition, formerly of the Housing Alliance, to tell us what's going on the federal level. And Victoria, press star 7 to unmute yourself.
Great, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thanks Levana, and hi everybody. I'm excited to be on this call today, and congratulations for all, especially around the Clear Title Bill. That's really exciting. I remember working on that, so I remember Cindy working on that, so that's really awesome news. So I'm going to go over some federal priorities today. I'm going to start with appropriations. So in terms of the appropriation process, where we are now is that the Appropriation Committee bills have passed the House and the Senate, and so they have yet to come up for a vote on the full House and Senate floors, but we think that's going to be coming soon. So first, I'll just give an overview about the bills. So basically, both bills preserve the 10% increase in funding in fiscal year 18 by providing $1.8 billion in new resources for fiscal year 19. And they also preserve the Housing Trust Fund, which the President had proposed to eliminate. We do like the Senate bill better. It provides HUD programs with more than $12 billion above the President's fiscal year 19 request, and it's more than $1 billion above the House bill. So the Senate and the Senate committee, the bill clearly rejected the administration's calls to cut housing investments in the form of funding cuts, harmful rent increases, rigid work requirements, and de facto time limits. So the both appropriation bills do not include any of the harmful cuts in housing investments, which is good news. So the Senate bill fully funds all existing rental assistance contracts, which is great, and it also includes additional resources to provide an estimated 7,600 new vouchers for youth aging out of the foster care system and veterans. So in contrast, the House bill does not fully renew housing choice vouchers and project-based rental assistance, which could result in fewer families being served through these programs. So I'm not going to go over all of the line items for the HUD budget, but if you have any questions about specific line items, feel free to ask them at the end of this call. And then also I think the folks at the Housing Alliance will be sending out our budget chart, which outlines all of the, or lists all of the line items with the House request and the Senate request, and then compares it to fiscal year 18. So again, we could see, we do think that these appropriation bills are going to be moving in the next few weeks. They actually could be moving when you all are in DC for the conference. So they could come up on the floor on the House and the Senate. And then once they get up on the House and Senate floor, we think things are going to be quiet. They're going to go on recess, although I know the Senate is only going on recess for a week. But we don't think that the budget bill, or appropriations bills are going to be finalized until about mid-December. So after the elections is when we're seeing the final budget for fiscal year 19 get passed. So that's the update on the budget. In terms of other good news, the mobility demonstration bill was actually passed yesterday in the full House. So basically what this bill would do if enacted, it would further improve voucher mobility to help households move into areas of opportunity. So it would basically give PHAs and HUD more resources to develop new models for improving voucher mobility, and it would provide counseling to help HUD-assisted families move to areas of opportunity. So we do support this bill because it has money behind it, and it promotes, again, this desegregation and promotes areas of opportunity for people to move into. So we do like this bill. On the threat side, there's a lot of talk around housing benefit cuts. So the administration had proposed in April a draft legislation entitled Making Affordable Housing Work Act of 2018. This bill has not been introduced, though, and there's really little appetite for this bill to go anywhere. But it would have implemented housing benefit cuts, so it would have implemented minimum rents. It would have increased contributions in rents. It would have changed the definition of what a elderly person is. But like I said, so this bill isn't going anywhere. And Carson did walk back his views on housing benefit cuts, but he recently doubled down on them when he had a hearing in front of the Senate. There is some support behind another draft bill, which is from Representative Ross from Florida. So this is another housing benefits cuts bill. So this would, in the guise basically of giving housing authorities a lot of flexibility, it really has little oversight, little regulations, and it would be extremely harmful on the families that are really depending on housing assistance. So there's a lot to this bill, but basically it would allow PHAs to increase rents for families living in public housing, who receive housing choice vouchers, project-based vouchers, and RAD converted properties. It would increase tenant rent contributions from 30% of the adjusted income to 30% of the gross income. It would eliminate income deductions for medical expenses, child care expenses, other things that we're counting as income deductions. It would allow for tiered rents by income bracket, which would basically increase minimum rents tenfold to $500 per month and require tenants' rents to increase several $100s a month when tenants' incomes exceed certain arbitrary income tiers. It would allow for stepped rents, which act as a de facto time limit and arbitrarily increases tenants' rents every 2 years. This bill would allow PHAs to design alternative rent calculation methods if certain goals are met. And the HUD Secretary does not explicitly reject the proposed method within 90 days. It would also allow HUD to establish via regulation new rents for elderly and disabled tenants living in public housing and who receive vouchers. It would also allow housing authorities to provide shallow subsidy vouchers for up to 40% of their tenant-based vouchers, which would shrink the amount of rental assistance provided to tenants by 60 to 80%. And then it would make it even harder for tenants to use their vouchers in areas of opportunity. And it would eliminate the requirement that a housing choice voucher tenant can't pay more than 40% of their income for rent. So there's a lot of issues with this bill. And again, it's basically a choose your own rent program for housing authorities, and housing authorities could also just create their own type of program that they decided on their own. And again, if HUD didn't approve it or didn't reject it within 90 days, it would just be allowed to happen. So it creates confusing and really different rent calculations and just provides little oversight. And again, creates a lot of harm to the folks receiving housing assistance. So we are not supportive of this legislation. Like I said, it's a draft right now, so it's not officially introduced yet in committee. But we're trying to get ahead of it because Congress has been passing bills pretty fast through the House and the Senate, and so it would give little time for a debate on the floor. And so we're trying to do our legwork now and get ahead of the issue and really ensure that Democrats don't sign on to this bill. We really don't want this bill to have any bipartisan representation on it. And so, again, we're just trying to get on top of that. And then there's a third bill that would impose work requirements on youth aging out of foster care. And so our main concern with this bill, it's Representative Turner's bill. Our main concern with this bill is that it would set precedent for work requirements to be added to other housing program legislation. And so that's our main concern with this bill, is that it would just create precedent. Right now the bill, it was in committee, and they've actually taken it off for consideration. We think they're reworking the draft of this bill. We have done a lot of outreach around this bill and shared our concerns. There were a lot of Dems who were signed on to this bill who we shared our concerns with. Actually, Representative Brady, Representative Marino, and Representative Fitzpatrick are currently on this bill. But like I said, it hasn't been reintroduced into committee. So we think that they're working on this, and it's not going to be coming law anytime soon. And then once August recess happens, there aren't going to be any more efforts around the Turner bill, around this foster care bill. And then real briefly around disaster recovery. So Philadelphia actually does have a lot of folks from Puerto Rico staying there, and I think other parts of Pennsylvania do have folks from Puerto Rico as well. Currently there's temporary shelter assistance, which is the only form of assistance right now for helping people, refugees from Puerto Rico, get short-term assistance. So this actually provides hotel vouchers for families from Puerto Rico, and it's set to expire July 24th. So what we're looking for is more long-term assistance, and so in the form of DHAP, which is the Disaster Housing Assistance Program. And FEMA are the ones that implement this program, and they have not done so, choosing not to do so. So there is a bill called the Housing Victims of Major Disasters Act of 2018 that 8 senators introduced. It would require FEMA to enter into an interagency agreement with HUD to implement DHAP, which would provide temporary rental assistance and wraparound services to those displaced by Hurricane Maria and future disasters. And there's also a companion bill in the House that was introduced by Representative Espaillat. And so we are supporting this bill, and also Senator Casey signed on to it. So when you have a visit with him, you can thank him for his support of Senator Warren's Housing Victims of Major Disasters Act, which is S2996. And then I think that's, and then in terms of just briefly about food stamps or SNAP, there's the Farm Bill in the House. So basically there's a Farm Bill that includes information about or talks about SNAP. And so basically the House version of the Farm Bill passed with additional work requirements included as part of the SNAP program, although the Senate version also passed and did not have those additional work requirements included for the SNAP program. So now the two bills are in conference, and legislators are working on creating a compromise bill. So we're not sure where that is at the moment, but we're hoping that the additional work requirements would not be added to that, because there already are work requirements. As a recipient of SNAP, there already are work requirements, and so additional ones would kick a lot of families off of this really important and vital program. So that is my updates for my updates on the federal side of things.
Great. Thank you so much, Tori. There's been a lot going on at the federal level, and I know that people have been following it. I think some of the worst predictions have not come true, but I think it's really important for us to keep the pressure up, because that's a main reason why some of that really bad stuff hasn't happened. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Gail and Joe, who are going to just talk in general about the Advocacy Day and what we can do to make that most effective. And you guys don't forget to *7 to unmute yourself.
Hi, it's Gail. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to talk about our Capitol Hill Day. This is our annual Capitol Hill Day in Washington, D.C. We do it in conjunction with the National Alliance to End Homelessness Conference, which typically happens the last week of July. So Wednesday, July 25th, we are going to be in Washington, D.C. We have 3 visits scheduled. There's going to be a visit with Senator Toomey's office, a visit with Senator Casey's office, and a visit with Representative Cartwright's office. Leading up to that day, if you haven't already registered, please do so for those who plan on attending. And please know you don't have to attend the conference to participate in the Capitol Hill Day. We are going to have a planning call next Wednesday, the 18th at 3:30. And with that, we will be reviewing each of the 3 teams. People are more than welcome to participate in more than one meeting. However, the Senator Toomey meeting and the Representative Cartwright meeting are at the same time, so those folks won't necessarily be able to, if you're going to the Toomey meeting, you can't go to Cartwright and vice versa. So we will have our planning call, and then for those folks who are attending the conference, we will have a room set up at 8:15 on Tuesday morning for anyone to stop by and talk to us about their visit and answer any questions. We are more than happy to do a run-through of the meeting and your speaking piece if you so wish. And then we will have our meetings the day of. So really our ask this year is to please fund McKinney-Vento HUD homeless assistance programs in fiscal year 2019 at $2.8 billion. Our secondary ask is to support all federal housing, homeless assistance, and community development programs and urge for sustained funding in fiscal year 2019. We have our talking points. And really what we ask of all folks attending this, I will be running the Senator Toomey meeting. Colleen Downey will be running the Senator Casey meeting. Joe Willard from People's Emergency Center will be running the Representative Cartwright meeting. So we will be responsible for opening and closing and doing the ask. What we ask from all of you who are planning to attend to really just bring a really positive message and talk about the solutions that you're doing in your communities that are making a real impact in people's lives. So, some of our talking points are we are making great progress in meeting our local affordable housing and ending homelessness goals. These federal programs are making it possible to help people. This is a good time to bring a success story from your community. So these programs make it possible for people to get back on their feet. Another talking point is when resources are focused, we see success. And if we increase funding, we can end homelessness in Pennsylvania. And the federal government must maintain its commitment to assisting us. The consequences of reducing funding can be really, really high. So again, those are our talking points. Any of you on the call who plan on attending, you want to think about what you want your minute or two to story to share with the staffer in Senator Toomey's office. If you want to think about that, and then on our planning call next week, we can definitely do a run-through and, of course, help everybody sort of refine their piece of the meeting. And so with that, I'm going to pass it on to Colleen Downey, and she is going to review the packets that we're going to provide everybody the day of, and where to meet for the first meeting with Senator Toomey and go over the rest of the schedule for the day. Colleen?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for everyone who signed up for the Capitol Hill Day. So far, we have 28 people, so we really appreciate everyone signing up. So as Gail said, I'm just going to briefly review what's in the packets. I sent out a calendar invitation for everybody who has registered for the Capitol Hill Day yesterday afternoon. So if you'd like to review those materials, they're in that calendar invite. So in that invite, we have the schedule for the day, which includes the top half of the schedule that talks a little bit about the conference schedule, so you know when the conference ends and the appropriate time to leave the conference to get over to the Capitol. Included, too, is the talking points that Gail referred to. We also have two fact sheets. One is the economic benefits of housing, as well as an updated McKinney-Vento fact sheet, which has current numbers for McKinney-Vento, the administration's proposal, as well as the National Alliance to End Homelessness proposed number. And then also what we're going to include in the packet is the National Low Income Housing Coalition's budget chart for all that. So everybody will get a copy of all those materials, and we'll be able to bring copies as well for our meetings. We also encourage everybody, if you have program materials from your organization, to bring those as well to the meetings, to the Toomey, Casey, and Cartwright meetings. As Gail said, we'll be meeting in the Russell Senate office building right outside Senator Toomey's office. So that meeting does start at 2 o'clock, and the conference ends at about 12:45. So it gives everybody plenty of time to make your way over to Capitol Hill, and we'll meet outside 248 Russell Senate office building, and that's Senator Toomey's office. Also, if you can't make next week's planning call, they do reserve some time at the conference to do a state planning meeting, and we have our time as Tuesday the 24th at 8:15 a.m. to 8:45. So if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to Gail, Joe, or I.
Great. Thanks, guys.
So, Joe, are you on the phone?
Press *7 to unmute yourself if you're muted.
Hi, did that work? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Do you want to review your plan for the Cartwright meeting?
Sure. For folks, and on my records that we have, that Colleen and I have, 3 people are coming to the Cartwright meeting. If we can meet in the lobby of the hotel at, let's say, 12:30, that should give us time to grab lunch and still be there at 12:30, and then we'll hop in a cab or Uber over to Capitol Hill. It's about a 30 to 40-minute ride over to Capitol Hill. That'll give us plenty of time to find the office and get there. And we're meeting with a fairly new staff person that he has. He's the legislative counsel for Representative Cartwright. I'll send out some background information to you probably sometime next week. And we'll have the same conversation with them as Gail and Colleen just mentioned we'll have with Senators Casey and Toomey. Back to you.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. So thanks again for everyone. So what I'd like to do now is to open the line to questions. So I'm going to just ask people to press *7 to unmute yourself. And if you have a question, you can just go ahead and ask. You can ask a question to me, Tori, Gail, Colleen,
This is Leah Doherty. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, it's Leah from Diana T. Myers and Associates. So I live in Representative Cartwright's district, so I would assume you want me to go to that meeting rather than Senator Toomey's, correct?
Yeah, that we would. And Leah, I did have you down for attending.
Okay.
So I hope you don't mind.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Just wanted to be clear. And then is there hope then that we would meet, those of us doing either Toomey or Cartwright would go to the Senator Casey meeting?
Right,
Yes,
yeah, we
you,
could just, yeah, we could do that.
Thank you.
If there are any other questions, just go ahead and press *7 to unmute yourself, and you can ask a question.
Hi, this is Gwen Brown with State Rep Isabella Fitzgerald's office. I just wanted to know, is there going to be like a hard copy? I was trying to take notes, but it was a lot of information. Is it something that will have all this information in it?
On the different pieces of legislation, well, we will have a budget chart for the federal budget that we'll send around following this call. And also, I'm making a recording so we can share that with everyone afterwards as well.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm. If there's any other questions, again, people can press *7 to unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Leah Doherty again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Samuel, could you send me a direct email? Because I have a question for you, but I don't have your email, or at least not easily in this list here.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, then I will go ahead and wrap us up. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing all of you in Washington, D.C. at the end of the month. All right, thanks a lot.